All right, so welcome to Growth Rings. And today we're having an exquisite session on coaching and the third thing. And when I first heard about the third thing, I was massively intrigued, and I'm still intrigued. I want to introduce myself. I'm Bev Lutz. I'm a co-founder of the Center for Coaching and Organizations, a faculty member and a board member. For those of you who aren't familiar with the Center for Coaching and Organizations, which we often call CCO, we are a 50C3 nonprofit, C3 nonprofit, and our mission really is to maximize human potential through the power of coaching, both individually as well as in organizations. And we do that through a series of things, but at the core of it, we're trying to make coaching itself more accessible to folks who are often underrepresented as clients and don't have the same access. And we're also looking at making coaching education more accessible. We're also interested in expanding the community of coaches and leaders and organizations that are embracing coaching, both as an intervention, let's say, or a strategic initiative or support, or even as a culture. And so the Growth Rings, our Community Connects, our annual summit, which is happening again in April, and we're ecstatic that Pam McLean of the Hudson Institute and author of Self as Coach, Self as Leader will be our keynote. So you're welcome to look at our events page to sign up for our what we call our regularish newsletter, where you'll get a short dip into what's going on in the CCO community. And we welcome you in whatever way you want to participate. What I'd like to say briefly before we get into coaching and the third thing is we are currently running a workshop in connection with ICF Minnesota, the local International Coaching Federation chapter called Self as Coach, Self as Leader. And it is a 3-session workshop based on Pam McLean's book, but really taking it really richly into who we are as coaches, who we are as leaders, and what that self-awareness can do to fuel us. The first session just happened, but you are welcome if you're interested to sign up, because that first session was recorded. You're able to listen to it and then pop into the other 2 sessions. So again, you can find that on our LinkedIn page as well as other places. And Jenny Peterson, who's here with us today, is one of the co-conveners of that, and was talking to us about turning up the heat. So if that intrigues you, go take a look. All right, so today it is my enormous pleasure to welcome Michael Nelson and Andy Nelson as our conveners, our presenters, our guides, and our wise ones, who will often say, oh, we are no wiser than the rest, but are always welcoming presences to exploration and deep dives and much frivolity too. So we're going to do this a little differently. Often I introduce the speakers, but actually I'm going to turn it over to Michael and Andy now. Welcome, Chris, and welcome, Megan. And they will introduce each other.
Great. Thank you. I'm going to share my screen here. Did that come up for everybody, the title slide? Great. I am going to begin by introducing you to Andy Nelson. I know many of you may know him already. I'm going to look at my notes so I get all the qualifications just right. It is pure joy to introduce you to my best friend, my husband, my office mate, and occasionally my coach, whether he realizes it or not. Those who know Andy know that he is an ICF certified executive coach. He has spent decades in leadership roles in Fortune 500 companies with healthcare, retail, technology, and manufacturing. His professional and personal life is committed to living in full essence. And I met him in a bar. He was on stage playing trumpet, and I'm going to move to that picture. This is a current photo from just a few months ago, but when I first met him, I had been dragged to a bar, which I did not usually frequent, and the band on stage featured Andy, and we had a brief conversation between sets. And after that conversation, I decided I was in love and going to marry him, but I didn't tell him that. So after about 6 months of following him around, he caught me, and the rest is history. And it is an absolute joy to be bringing some of the work we both do in our own little bubbles together to be with you today. So thank you for having us.
Oh,
Thank you. Thank you so much, Michael. That was terrific. I have the distinct honor of introducing you all to Michael Nelson. Michael is a badass arts educator, a leader, a designer, school board director, and writer who also happens to be my best friend and my wife. Um, it was love at first sight for me when I first saw her in this exact picture. True story. This was published in full color on the back of the glossy publication of our alma mater, um, St. Mary's University of Minnesota. And when I saw it, I thought, ooh, who's that? Like, here's a young woman who clearly loves art and apparently loves children. Like, tell me more. What's going on here exactly? Um, she's got a master's in art history from Notre Dame. She's consulted with museums throughout the country on their arts education programming, and she's all about celebrating the human being she's with, whether that's a docent,
mm,
teacher, a student, a client, which makes me so excited to work with her today for the first time ever, believe it or not, after what
oh,
we determined 31 years since our first kiss, something like that, married 27. This is the first time we've ever presented together. And so thank you to CCO for the platform. And we're just so excited to rock this today with you all.
Thank you. Oh, your energy is so good, Andy. Thank you. Oops. There we go. So just a quick preview of what you can expect today. We're going to briefly introduce you to the idea of a third thing if you're not familiar with it.
Mm-hmm. We're going to interactively model a 3-step basic process for engaging with any artwork or truly any third thing.
And then after we practice that together, we're going to give you time alone, quiet time, in which you will be given the chance to select an artwork that calls to you. And you will try your hand at that 3-step process, but then we're going to up level it and also give you a prompt to help you engage with that artwork as a third thing and enter into dialogue with it.
And then we're going to come back together and the discussion will be really centered around you and whatever you're willing and would like to share. Nobody's going to be put on the spot to do that. We'll come back together and close it out as a group. All right. Very good. So I just want to add a couple of quick reflections about this because as a leader, as a coach, as a combination of those things, or however else you're showing up today, we know that you all have diverse and fabulous experience in your own lines of work. And our invitation to you is to really enjoy the ride today. Be a beginner with us because this third thing approach, which frankly, I didn't know about till my wife, Michael, introduced me to it. I really do think is powerful. I think wherever we're coming from with our leadership or coaching or other experience, I think it's going to be a really cool extra flavor, extra tool in your toolbox, if you will, or a toy in your toy box that you'll enjoy taking from this.
Thank you. All right, so we're going to go ahead and take yourselves off mute for a minute. We're going to do a little activity just to put us in the mindset of being a beginner and hearing different voices in the room. If you've done this before, then I'm going to ask you not to verbally participate. But if you haven't, take a moment and look at the screen in front of you. And I want you to think about which of the following letters is the most out of place and why. And please, I can't see everybody's faces the way my screen is set, so please just go off the microphone and tell me which letter and why you think that's the one most out of place.
I would say the letter Q.
Great. Why?
Because it, like linearly speaking, like B, C, D, like those all seem to follow. Like if you had A, it would all follow in one line, but Q is really far away from all of those.
Terrific. So Q is out of place because of where it falls just in the placement of the alphabet as we know it. Great. Thanks for sharing that. Other people, what do you think?
I'd say C.
Okay. Why?
Just visually, it's the only one that doesn't have a tail or down.
Fabulous. Okay. So C is the only one that has an open spot in the letter, no tail, up or down. Great. Other people.
I'd say B because I expect A to be there first.
Fabulous. That's the first time I think I've heard that one before. That's fabulous. Thank you.
And I was thinking, I thought the other things too, but
Yeah.
C because it has an open mouth.
Great. An open mouth and C.
And
Anybody
I'll
else?
say B
Great.
because the C, D, and Q all have the same right facing.
Yep.
Yeah,
Oh.
you know what I mean. B
Yeah,
is
so the
left
curve
facing.
goes one way and the B is mirror image the way it bumps out. Great. Did I get that right, Megan?
Yes.
Thank you very much. Okay. Anybody else before we go on? So I took this activity from a book by Robert Kriegel, which is called If It Ain't Broke, Break It. And he was exploring about how to destroy sacred cows in business, how we hang on to things, and the power of being like a beginner. So he was playing with this, showed it to his 5-year-old, who without thinking twice said, "It's so easy, the letter T is the most out of place." So I just want to say as we go into this, with all your expertise and ways of seeing things, don't be afraid to set that aside and totally be open.
Call out the T if you see it.
Call out the T if you see it. I love that. Okay, we're going to talk a little bit about the idea of third thing and how it's used and how I came about to using it. Basically, the idea comes from Parker Palmer, who is an educator, an author, an activist, somebody who practices in areas of leadership and building community. And I had the book near me, but he talks about third things in different contexts, but also in his book called A Hidden Wholeness in terms of education. And his thinking that he has learned in working with people is that sometimes when there's a topic that needs some exploration, and two people might be coming kind of head on, we're taught in society to sort of confront things head on and you know, what do you think about this? And what do you think about this? And that does a couple of things. One, the person facilitating or leading is sort of seen as that authority right away. Two, it can make you confrontational. C, it can kind of make your quiet soul voice shut down a little bit if you have to go at it that way. So we're going to share 2 quotes from him. And what Parker Palmer has talked about is if you've got these, you know, 2 people or 2 groups, you and an issue, whatever, and you add a third thing, it is something that helps you explore it sort of on the slant or in a more delicate way. And over the years, I've done that with artworks in facilitating conversations. So when describing the third thing, this is from the Center for Courage and Renewal, which is his organization. And he says, how do we give people a level playing field to explore inner life issues without seeming to come at them from the standpoint of a particular tradition or a belief system? One way this is done is in a circle of trust using third things. People are invited to interact with the third thing, to be in dialogue with it, and to let it evoke from them whatever their soul wants to say. Eventually, these comments start weaving together into a tapestry of truth. And Parker talks about using a poem or a song or an artwork to help people reach their deeper thoughts and to share them with the group.
Weaving together in a tapestry of truth. I'm just soaking that one up.
Yeah.
I really love that imagery as it hit me today. Thank you, Michael, for that. So a second part of this that we wanted to share, also again from Parker Palmer, is this quote. We achieve intentionality by focusing on an important topic. We achieve indirection by exploring that topic metaphorically via a poem, story of music, or work of art that embodies, I need to scoot this over, that embodies it. I call these embodiments third things because they represent neither the voice of the facilitator nor the voice of a participant. They have voices of their own, voices that tell the truth about a topic, but in the matter of metaphors, tell it on the slant. Mediated by a third thing, truth can emerge from and return to our awareness, whatever pace and depth we are able to handle. Sometimes inwardly in silence, which you'll get a chance for today. Sometimes aloud in community, you'll also get a chance for that. Giving the shy soul, sorry, would you go back for a second? Giving the shy soul the protective cover it needs. So I really like that on the slant part. That, it's not that we're avoiding the truth, we're not sweeping it under the rug, but we're finding a way to each recognize each other's truths, if you will, but on the slant with the comfort or sometimes discomfort of a third thing.
Andy, I'm going to put you back on the screen for the next part.
All right, sounds good. So quick question for you all. Just by show of hands, please, like, how many of you as leaders, as coaches, as human beings, how many of you have had some experience with what we're calling the third thing here? All right, we've got about half or a little more on this screen at least. I'm going to see if I can. All right. So folks that aren't on video, if you're willing to go off video, just to share, please do, or maybe type it in the chat. But that's good to know. So we got about half, maybe a little bit more that are familiar with the third thing. So as we continue to get rolling and involve you here more in a moment with actual artworks and so on, just two quick reflections I wanted to give you. I was thinking about this myself as both a leader and as a coach, and where have third things been useful to me? So, and I just wanted to reflect these in case they're also useful to you, or maybe it makes you think of your own experiences with them. So the first one, from a leadership standpoint, I was thinking about some of the direct reports or folks I've worked with over the years. And let's say someone, is showing up to a status and they tend to be very execution focused, very much about the tactics. Like, okay, boss, we're going to go through this, we're going to go through this, we're going to go through this, right? One of the things I found useful is to literally break out of the standard and go for a walk. Back when we could do that, and thankfully we can do that again. Working at Target, I'm thinking about going through the skyways, even in the winter, right? And being able to have something right away. You can open up the air literally to the big bad world outside, and perhaps you'll find something on the way, like, oh, have you ever been to this coffee shop? And suddenly the discussion becomes a little more creative, a little less constrained. Maybe here we got to execute stuff. We only have 30 minutes for the status. Right away, that I've noticed in reflection can become a third thing. That experience of a walk or whatever you find on the way can just open up some creativity, some more open dialogue. Okay, so that's example one. The other quick example I'd give you is thinking about a coaching session as a coach, whether it's a work of art, a visual work of art, a song, whatever you or your client might find in your office. Since many of us are doing coaching via Zoom these days, sometimes the power of just whatever might be sitting in front of that person can be really revealing, or sometimes asking an open-ended question like, okay, can we stand up right now, and what in your office helps reflect what you're really going through right now with that coworker. One of the things I just wanted to put out there by giving these quick and dirty examples from my own experience is that the third thing can really be anything. And sometimes it can be very powerful just to jar us loose from, there's this tough issue and there's you and I. And together we got to duke it out. And we got to quickly, wrestle this thing to the ground and beat the crap out of it and solve the issue. Or can we take a deep breath? Could we have a third thing in front of us that might open up the conversation to something a little more creative or a little more open-ended and help you see some possibilities? Maybe both of us see possibilities going forward.
Thank you for sharing that perspective. I appreciate that context. I'm going to just give you one example that Andy and I unexpectedly stumbled into several years ago. What you're looking at is a not very good photograph of an artwork at the Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota. And Andy and I were up there in November of 2016. Those who don't know, Andy was diagnosed in October of 2016 with stage 4 colon cancer. And so in November, we had gone up for scans to build the medical team, et cetera. And for those who've ever had to go through scans, you know that then you have hours to wait before you get your results and make your plan to go forward. So we looked for a quiet place to sort of just cozy up and wait. And we found this corner near the business office at the clinic. And we sat down in cozy chairs there and we're just sort of relaxing. But I think we were both feeling the heaviness of what was and what we didn't know coming up. And you can maybe tell in this photo, but it was feeling in that space in November in Minnesota, it was cold. It felt gray, and just the inside coloring, the little bits you can see kind of just accentuate it, just felt cold and gray. And these artworks just really appeared to be kind of like not very soft, not very welcoming, just sort of sharp edges. And as we sat there looking at them, for some reason we started to talk about them. So we were describing them, what we noticed, how it made us feel. But then we got up and we started to move around the artworks, which is one of the beauties of big sculptures. And so as we started to look through, and you can sort of see it here, we recognized that what happened is really the sculpture could transform lights and images into brighter light, into rainbow light. And we suddenly realized that as heavy as everything was feeling in that moment, there was power in changing our perspective. And that artwork gave us that gift, that sometimes just by moving around and looking, you find a new approach, a new view, and changing your perspective can help. And I think that was one of the first steps in our commitment to Andy's medical journey, saying, you know what? We have to look for not missing our joy, who can help us on this journey, let's build some hope. And it was a very powerful experience, but it also created a container for us to have a conversation that probably would not have happened without the prompt of starting to get to know that artwork just a little bit. So you can stumble upon third things when you aren't even trying to. Now, when you walk up to a work of art, or listen to a song, you may be moved in some ways, right? But it doesn't always mean that you're suddenly prompted to have a really deep conversation with it. And what Andy and I noticed was that we spent time sort of getting to know the sculpture in front of us, and the more time we spent with it, the more we changed the meaning we could make from it. And so when I teach about using the third thing for exploring topics, I use it in tandem with another approach that I put in place first. And that is a 3-step process to help you kind of get to know what's in front of you, your song, your poem, your artwork, before you go a little bit deeper. And the reason I use this is it goes back to when I was a young museum educator, and I was working with teachers who were working on student-focused learning, and their goal was to get leaders out of the front of the room. Like, how do we transform our classrooms so the teacher's not always up front feeding all the information and controlling all the information? And so I worked with the 10th grade literature class, and what they did is every night students went home, they read their reading assignment from, The Adventures of Tom Sawyer, and every time they had one worksheet with 3 questions. What did you observe in your reading? What was your personal response to it? And what questions did you have? And when they came to the classroom the next day, there was no teacher at the front of the room. They sat in circle, and the students started to do their sharing, and they went around the room. And what this did is it took the leader out of that expert role. It invited them to participate, grounded in what they thought and observed and experienced. And the teacher merely could look for these teachable moments where he might say, oh, tell me more about that. I want to hear more. Or did anybody see that differently or observe something different there? And as the conversation evolved, he could say, oh, I'm so interested you picked up on that, because at this time in American history, this was actually happening. And so it wasn't that they were avoiding learning the context for what they read, but they were kind of co-teaching and growing together. And so I took the 3 steps and I used that to start to get to know an artwork and then take it further and use it as a third thing. So right now what I'm going to ask you to do is participate with me and go back off mute if you are willing. And we're going to just practice as a group before you go alone this first part of our experience today, and that is our observations, responses, and questions. So I'm going to invite you to take some time, you probably already have, looking at the artwork in front of you. And the first thing, which seems so obvious and almost unnecessary, is to spend time observing. And I just want you to think about how easy it is in today's world to be with somebody. And for example, instead of listening and paying close attention to what they say, just to hold space, we listen so we can prepare our response. Or we visit a friend who's hurting, and instead of just taking in what's there and how they look and what the environment is, we jump into problem solving right away. I think in this experience, what you should probably do is this, or that reminds me of the time my Uncle Joe had to deal with this. So observing is a way of kind of just making yourself present to an artwork, to another person, to a situation, and it kind of grounds you. And what I'd like to do here is focus on describing as a group what you see here. And I mean from very basic to detailed. So for a moment, pretend you've just called a friend on the phone, okay? They're across the country, and you're standing in front of an artwork at a grand museum, and you can't wait to share your excitement. And you're going to describe it to your friend. Now, your friend has no idea what they're looking at. Is it realistic? Is it abstract? Is it a sculpture or painting? And so at this point, I would like you to just call out, list something you see in here, and don't feel like you have to start with something really detailed or fancy. Let me know what this looks like from where you stand. So who'd get us started with something easy?
I can.
Great.
It's a two-dimensional image.
Very good. Two-dimensional image. It's a painting. It's flat. Thank you. Keep firing them off. I don't even have to call on you.
So I kind of look at the painting and I'm seeing it sort of almost trisected. There's the bottom and then there's the top into two.
Interesting. Great. Tell me more about what I'm looking at in those dissections in this flat dimensional piece.
Yeah, so in the bottom half, there's the sort of waves of, it looks like some sort of grass, but the grass is mostly gold with some streaks of green. And
great, thank you.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Sorry, Chris, I didn't mean to cut you off. If you want to add more there.
Say, the top left is a bunch of dark pineish looking trees, mostly, maybe not pine now that I look at it. And then there's a big white house with two people. Oh, and the dog.
Yep. The dog, great. Who can build on that? Tell me more about the dog or the trees or the people.
I noticed that there was no walkway to the house. There's no path. There's no front steps. There's nothing leading to the house.
Fabulous. That's a great observation. I've never had anybody call that out before. Thank you.
There's kind of a implied path from the woman looking at the man, looking at the dog.
Meaning how the artist kind of, I don't know if my mouse actually shows, but how it leads the eye from the woman to the man to the dog.
Yeah.
Yeah, great. Great, thank you.
There's an overhang above the door is one thing I notice.
Overhang on the door, go ahead. John, was that you?
Yeah, I'm noticing like a softness and a stillness. It's not a river, it's not a waterfall, it's not a freeway. Like a still scene.
Okay, it's still great. It's interesting sometimes. Oh, go ahead.
The collie's alert to something they're not, the people aren't alert to yet. I have a collie.
Right.
That's happening that the people are not clued into at this point.
Marion, tell me what the artist did that revealed that to you. Like what?
For me, it's
how did the collie get painted?
Oh, it's the collie, the ears up, the tail's up. And then even I did notice, this is me nerdy now, but that the angle of the back of the collie's head kind of parallels the man's back with those little diagonal lines. There's not a lot of diagonals in this. Well, the tree's a little.
Yep.
So there's something like moving you out a little bit of the painting.
Interesting. Great. Yep. Sometimes artists will try and do that. Break the painting plane.
Mm-hmm.
Other observations. So can you tell me a little bit more? And I don't need to belabor it, but let's just get a few more observations there.
I'm noticing some period details of the house. So there's a little bit of ornate woodwork on the house. And then the clothes the people are wearing also signify a certain point in time.
Great. Just the details of looking at their clothes. How about one more? Anybody else want to add something?
tan of the man. It looks like he wears a hat and a little bit longer sleeves and like he's worked outside and has those tan lines, and the woman does not. It's just interesting.
Great observations. Okay. And if we had all the time in the world, you could spend 20 minutes just refining your observations. So let's get to know our artwork even a little better in our dialogue here. Let's move to responses. In responses, I'm really just inviting you to go beyond what you see. Is there something when you look at this artwork it reminds you of? Is there a movie, an experience, a place you lived? If you could enter the artwork, you could think about it that way. Where would you go? Would you talk to anybody there? Think about your senses, respond to it that way. Can you imagine the texture of anything, the sounds you might hear or not hear, right? The smells that you might have. Anything that goes beyond what you observe, but invites you to engage in a little more personal way as you respond to the piece.
When I see those trees, I can smell the pine.
Yes, I agree. Yes, thank you.
I feel tension. There's something with the woman that with her arms crossed and how they're not looking at each other, the man and the woman. That I'm sensing tension.
Great. And I love what you did there. You built what you observed in the way the artist showed them into the response, that now you've got this mood that they're dealing with, that there's tension.
Yeah, and I'll build on that because my original, like looking at it, reminded me of playtime with the dog. Like I'm envisioning they're after work. This is what they do, but there is something tense or a little bit eerie about it. And I think it's, again, what we were talking about earlier, there's no walkway, the grass is long, it's not being, taken care of. There's something a little bit, I don't know, not dark, but just something a little bit off about it.
Thank you for that. I would agree. I appreciate that perspective.
I've never seen this before, but just noticing the shades on most of the windows are closed, so it's got me responding or wondering how much light is coming in. Period.
Yeah.
Sorry, Kathy, if you get something.
No, the movie title, No Way Out, and the song Hotel California come to mind.
Oh,
I can't
interesting.
help but, be applying this meaning to it, and I'm trying not to, but
no, but this is what this second piece is, right? You step beyond just the observation. Now you're making meaning with it, and you're making meaning with it in a way that you would do uniquely from anybody else, and that's part of the magic of it, right? And Andy, what you said is going to kind of lead us into our next step. I don't want to cut anyone off. Was there another response someone really wants to get out there first? Okay, so Andy, you kind of led us into questions beautifully. Thank you for that. And the third part of getting to know your artwork a little bit is just to ask questions of it, knowing that there's value in the questions themselves, and you don't have to have the answers. And I don't mind sharing this with you, but I have a wonderful, wonderful counselor who knows I get very anxious sometimes about the future. And she has been really coaching me to say, sometimes you need to live the question and to just not always be seeking for the answer. And with my background in education, I will say too that sadly, education is often built around just being driven to get the answer and get the right answer. And we don't allow space for questions sometimes. Not all questions are, as coaches and leaders, not all questions are equal in their power to make meaning or elicit responses or to build teamwork. Some do take us further than others. But the more we exercise the practice of allowing space for just the questions, the more we exercise that muscle. And I have done an activity in different ways with people over the years where I just do a question asking activity, and I'll send them, for example, at a museum to an artwork and ask them to write 10 questions down about that artwork. And it looks like they're struggling, but they get through it pretty quickly. And they're pretty proud of themselves and they're ready to go. And then I say, now add 25 more questions to your list. And they're like, what? But they spend more time, they think more deeply. And then I ask them to look at their list and circle the top 1 or 2 questions they think are the most thought-provoking, the most potential to engage somebody or to make meaning. And it's almost always one of those last 5 to 7 questions on their list. So in order to kind of get to know your artwork better, I just want to focus on asking some questions. And Andy, you started to kind of phrase a question. Do you want to repeat what you were saying there?
Yeah, if I can remember. It was something around, because full disclosure, we didn't rehearse this. I'm accidentally being the assistant here. But the question I had was something around, I wonder where the light is, or I wonder how much is happening here.
Yeah. So what I'd like to do briefly, and then we're going to move on and get more engaged, is the same way you did with observations. You can start with basic or go more involved. No pressure to come up with one of those deep, meaningful, number 27 questions. But I'd like to just rapid fire off some questions. If you could know anything about this artwork, or the people in the artwork, or the artist, or the location, what would you want to know? And let's just go for volume of questions and just fire them off.
Well,
and I will not answer them.
Yeah, I want to know whether the woman is holding herself together, holding back, holding in. I want to know what her arms are signifying.
Great, thank you for that. Anybody
I
else?
want to know what the
going.
dog's looking at.
Yes, so do I. Thank you.
I'd like to know why the grass isn't kept.
Yes. Great.
I can't really tell what the man. Oh.
I'm curious what the guy does for a living or works or what he's doing that he looks like he does.
I want to know how they're related. What is their relationship?
Yep. Great. How are they? Great. Fabulous. How do the 3 belong together? Marion, were you saying something?
I was going to say, can't tell what the man has in his hand. I was wondering what's in his hand.
Great.
And also, how is the dog going to make the picture come alive? Kind of.
Yeah.
John's been putting some things in.
I haven't got my chat open. I'm sorry.
What's in the woods and how long ago was the house painted?
John wants a new customer.
Whose dog is it?
And whose dog is it? Thank you.
Why does it look so dark in the woods?
Yes. Great.
What season is it?
Yes. Fabulous.
Why is the grass the same under the trees as around the house? Like the underbrush is just the same.
Yes. Yep. Lori do they live there in the chat?
What else is causing shade besides those trees?
Yes. Interesting. Now we're getting deeper there. All right. Was there one more that I just heard?
What are we not seeing?
Very good. What are we not seeing? And that's such a good question in life, isn't it? So we just went very quickly through this. And the reason I wanted to do this is to let you know that you're going to also be, here's what we're going to do. Let me just show you this. Oops. Back. Okay. What we're going to do now is you're going to have an opportunity to select from 5 artworks, one that calls to you that you want to work with. We want you to first spend a little time getting to know your artwork better before you dive right into something that engages it more deeply as a third thing. So we ask you to do this observe respond question, and hopefully you have a piece of paper or a pencil you can jot down, or else just do it in your mind, but just spend a little time looking at it the same way Andy and I looked at those pillars without realizing there was a discussion waiting to happen. And then with that, you'll do that. And then with that artwork you've selected, we have 4 options for you to choose from where you can pick the question that most appeals to you. And we're going to have you ask your artwork that question and enter into dialogue with your artwork. So this next part, I'm going to try and very slowly explain how we'll get these individual pieces together. If we were all in a gallery together, I'd simply hand you each a random card and you'd go off and choose any artwork you want. We're in a little more controlled setting here, and that is fine. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a PDF that looks like this. You don't have to be able to read this in the chat in a moment. And what you will do is the part highlighted in blue is really just kind of the conversation starter for you and your artwork. I love quotes. And so really the question grew out of a quote that I had held. And so there was the quote and it led to this question. And then I just added some more prompts below it for different ways to think about how you might engage with your artwork. So I want you to picture your artwork as sort of a safe space to explore some dialogue and not only tell it what you're thinking, but invite it to share with you as well.
Hey, Michael, could I interrupt for a
yes.
quick question?
Yes.
So John put in the chat a question. Can we pick
yes.
an art piece at home that really calls to us?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So
that's
I'm
cool.
going to put this, here's how we'll do it. I'll put the PDF in the chat so you can open it up. And then I'm going to put a link that will open in a new window with 5 choices for an artwork. And that's going to look a little bit like this. And you're going to click on it and it will enlarge for you. So you can just focus on the one, and a reminder of those 3 prompts will be below it. And if you have something at home you want to use, please, by all means, use that as well. So at this point, I'm going to, let me go off of sharing, open up the chat, and put the PDF in there. If you have any problem getting the PDF open, let me know. I have it backed up. Oops, I am restricted by the account admin for sharing my PDF. Otherwise, I could put a link in, but then...
Could that be, I'm wondering, Bev, could that be...
It's interesting because I do not know why that would be, and I'm not the account admin.
Michael, can you send, is there a link on that website that we had as backup that might work?
There is a link. Maybe everybody could just sort of...
Let me try something. I'm going to make you co-host.
Sure.
See if that does anything for you.
Nice.
Okay. Let's see. It's still saying restricted.
Okay.
That's all right. I have a link I can put up, and maybe you can just screenshot the one that you're going to choose. And then I'll add the link where you'll go for the photos. When you choose your photo, we'll be giving you some time alone, and you're welcome to go on mute, to turn your camera off, and start with those 3 prompts. And then whichever of the 4 choices you make, I'm going to try one more time to put it in. Nope. All right, let me grab the link very quickly, the backup link. All right, so I'm going to put this link in, and if you click on it, it should give you 4 choices. I only need you to choose one. Let me know if you're having trouble getting to it. It came up, okay.
Can others, anybody else just confirm you can see the 4 of them with that link? Just with a thumbs up. Cool.
All right. You could just focus on looking at the part with blue and see if there's one that calls out to you, or screenshot the whole page if you're not quite sure yet. And the next link will be a link to take you to the artwork. So to me, autonomy and being able to make a choice in the process is a really important part of letting your soul speak. So
thanks,
thank you, Lori. I'm glad you were here. Thank you so much.
Some folks need to drop, but thank you for everybody who might need to drop for being with us so far.
Okay. So here is the link that should take you to where you can choose an artwork that works well with the prompt or the blue prompt that you want. And you don't even have to try and make them pair. Just pick an artwork and use your question and do your observe respond question, and then use that extra prompt we put up with the quote and question to get to know your artwork a little bit better. I think what we will try to do is take 10 or 15 minutes. I know we could do more, just to give you some alone time, but the real magic is in coming back together to share from your point of view so that we're not speaking at you anymore. I will let you know when we've got about 2 minutes left to come to the chat. So don't close your Zoom window when you hop over to the website for your artwork. Does that make sense? And I will let you know. And we will go from there. So roughly 10 to 15 minutes, and we will come back for discussion. If anyone has trouble, I'll watch the chat. Thank you so much. And if you're still going, that's okay. But what we'd like to do now is invite a few people to share with us. And what I can do is you can let me know which artwork you chose and I'll put it up on the screen for everybody to look at. Just briefly share with us a few things from your get to know period, you know, the observe, respond question. And then if you're willing, share the prompt that you used, the question that you used for your artwork. And some of you just may have stayed very surface level with a short time. Some of you may have gone more deep in making meaning with it. You just share what you're comfortable with. So is there anybody who would be willing to get us started? And I will put your image up on the screen.
I can go.
Great, Bev, which artwork did you use?
It was the figure with all of the crocheted,
Great.
that one right there.
There we go.
And
Great.
I worked hard not to choose it, but it kept calling to me. So that was really interesting. I thought, oh, shoot, I have to choose this thing. And it was overwhelming to me to even observe it. And the first thing that hit me was how the Greatest Show of Earth button was cattywampus. It wasn't like big, bold, upright. And I saw all the noisemakers of all the different sizes. And then I saw the Jack-in-the-Box things sticking out of it. And then I was noticing all the crochet, and I noticed the hands, and, you know, I had various responses of overwhelm and distress because I had looked at the fists and are they in fear? Are they in rage? Are they relaxed fists? Or, you know, I had a lot of questions about that. You know, and was the intent to have it be a black mannequin figure underneath it? Was it intent to have a white doily covering the face? You know, I had all this. The thing I was working on, well, I took the prompt about let me see if I can pull it up. The one about something you're thinking about doing. Select an artwork that invites you to think about an opportunity or situation you think might be difficult to pursue. Well, I've been thinking about, on behalf of CCO, going to Chamber of Commerce meetings, which as an introvert and an episodically shy person really is not something I want to do. And when I looked at this figure, it was so intriguing because I found myself going, wow, I'm not sure I'm even gonna get to know a person underneath all that. And then I was like, but I'm a coach. I know how to go underneath all that. And what if I just showed up as a coach at these meetings and just experimented? And I found myself going in that direction. I would have gone there further with more time. It was very powerful from the get-go, not wanting to choose that. I tried to choose all the other ones. It didn't work. So thank you.
Well,
I have a lot more to think about with this. This is very powerful.
I love that. I will tell you, you can go see the actual artwork at the Minneapolis Institute of Art. And you can walk around it. And as an introvert, I could see why you tried to block yourself from taking this one.
So I'm actually going to be at MIA tomorrow morning.
Awesome. I hope it's still on display. That's fabulous. Thank you for sharing. Did anybody else choose this one? All right. Oh, Stephanie, did you?
I did actually. And I identified number 3 on the dialogue.
Okay.
A fresh eye. It just kind of like, I paired it with life. You know, people are very colorful, and there's so many things that are going on in people's lives that you don't know about. And sometimes there's different variations and depths of how things present themselves. And so I saw that and just kind of thought it was a representation of anybody and everybody out there who's got, you know, work, life, kids, spouse, family, you know, anything, and different areas of your life pop out in different ways. And some are louder at times than others. And that's just how I identified the question 3 with this picture.
Oh, I love that. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I love having 2 different questions going at this piece as well. All right. Does somebody else have one they'd like to share? I know our group is shrinking a little bit, but oops.
Britta, did you have that same one too?
Oh, do you want to share your thoughts on it too? That'd be great.
Sure, yeah. Yeah, I did have the same one. I was drawn to it because of all of the colors and yeah, just all of the like chaos and seeing a person standing in the middle. And I chose, oh, I have to go back to the prompts to remember what I chose. I believe I chose the one, select an artwork that invites you to look at something in your life from a different perspective. And I related when I got to the response part, the first thing that came up to me was it reminds me of what it feels like to try to organize my thoughts as someone with ADHD.
Oh, wow.
And like, it was interesting as I was like in that inquiry, there was like, I would vacillate between like joy and fear and then like judging the artist for making this so like cluttered and like kind of, it was interesting. I was cycling between lots of different emotions as I was encountering it as a representation of my ADHD. And yeah, and I thought it was interesting, like the greatest show and how that's sort of cattywampus, the greatest show on earth. Like, is this person putting on a show? Like, what's happening underneath all of that? Like, and then I wrote down, this was interesting. I said, the hands are black because the hands are uncovered and simple because those are the doers. And when you do, you bring clarity. And so it opened up this whole moment for me of like, oh, whenever I'm having trouble organizing my thoughts, usually when I do, that brings clarity as I'm like engaging in momentum forward. So that was what came up for me.
Thank you for being so willing to share that and your own experience, and that really resonates. And just the idea of being able to kind of like separate, like ADD, for example, and make it become a character. I'm hoping felt a little freeing, but it may be overwhelming too. So
no, it did, and I'm excited to see this in person. So thank you. Yeah,
good. I hope it's still on display. I'll be honest, this is an artwork that I was touring with somebody who was struggling with. I was just helping her with a website, but we were talking about. We were in the cafe, just visiting, and she's just like couldn't get to what her joy was and what were her hangups and whatever else. So we moved the conversation to the gallery. And the first question I asked her to find an artwork that tells me where you find your stumbling blocks. And the next one was take me to one that shows me how you want to feel doing your work. And she took me to this one.
Wow.
And it just, I mean, that's another time where I was like, you can sit in the cafe and have your discussion, or you can find a way to get her to open up and move into the gallery, right? So 3 of you, very different experiences, engaging with this object, coming at it from a different direction is just magical. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else want to share theirs? I don't like putting people on the spot because sometimes it gets very personal. Great. Which one did you have?
I picked the one that's kind of the mountain or the hill edges with the rocks that are cliff areas and the waterfalls, etc.
This one?
Yes. So to me, I kind of took this for the perspective as I'm building my business. Like there's a lot here. There's like the spectrum that's reflecting the water. As water cuts away, like the path. Right. This was solid at one point. Water has cut it away based on changes there. And so I took that as an analogy of what I'm doing today, what I'll be doing 2 years are 2 completely different things because, things will change and morph, meld, and mold based on what I am doing or will want to be doing. I took the 3, I could see 3 ponds, like the people I work with or partner with, like we will build things together and I'll have different size ponds and different size things that we will create together. And it took that really light in the center of that's what's next. I don't know what that is, but that's going to grow what's next. So I'll just close with that.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that. And I got to come back and spend more time with this piece now that you've said that. And I couldn't help but, when you talked about 2 years out, that it may look different. There's something powerful in just knowing that it's clearing way for those ponds, right? That it's worn that rock away. So thank you.
I have one more thing. I did feel overwhelmed. Like if I was at the very front of the bottom of the picture looking up, because I thought, oh, there should be like an eagle up there. But like then I got really overwhelmed, like how high and how tall that is, how far that away. That's away. So like that it's way beyond that center of what's next. Like that's like maybe my 5 and 10 years out. And that's overwhelming. Like, I don't know what that is.
It can be. Right. Yep. Yeah, and that's reminders to ourselves that it is overwhelming and one step at a time. And when I look at those rocks, I'm like, those are some careful steps to get there. Thank you for
It's very
sharing that.
exciting.
Does the light feel good to you? Does it feel joyful? Does it
It
feel
does. Yep. Yep. I love
good?
rain. I love waterfalls and the tapping and the right. That's all change that happens. And yeah, it's really peaceful for me.
Thank you. Anybody else want to share?
I chose this one too, and I will just
Great.
add that I love what you said about the water kind of doing this over time. The way I'm really thinking, hearing that is, if I keep doing this, it'll really have impact. But when I was looking at this, my first reaction is, that's a treacherous walk from here to the light. I'm like, oh my God. It's sharp on the edges. Even some of the foliage looks sharp and a little spiky and eek, but it's beautiful. And I bet it's really refreshing to swim in those little ponds. And I thought that I could maybe even see a human laying on the rock of the third pond in between the second and the third pond. I don't know if you can see that. And I felt myself drawn towards the light. Like I really wanted to go there. And it's like, whoa, there's a lot in between here. But the other thing I see is that rainbow on the side, which really is sort of a sign of hope. Or that was the first thought I had.
Thank you for that. I love how you both kind of looked at it as a journey, and it almost looks intentional the way the artist at the bottom of this composition kind of just puts you right there. Like you're not sitting on a safe, spot somewhere. You're not in a distance looking at it in a bigger setting. Like you're right there, and there's no way but forward. Yeah, exactly. So how you make your way forward, and if you're feeling invited to, I wonder if that was intentional on the artist's part. Thank you for sharing those perspectives.
I love that. Michael, I'll just chime in just with the dialogue of all three of you here. Like the question that came to me, if I'm putting myself in that spot, which now feels really precarious, is okay, your choice. You could stay in the darkness or try something else, right? Like it's almost there's no backward or safety in where I'm at.
So I picked this one too. And what I picked first was actually the question, which was the number 2 question about, something seems a bit smaller and we can fit through. And then it took me a while to pick this image, but I do love hiking. And I had sort of a moment like Britta of like, just do it. Like, just do it. And
nice.
It wasn't I'm headed to the light. I know that because of my own life experiences.
Right.
But it's going to be beautiful on the way. And there's life even in the cliffs and those little plants, and there's water. Like I love water. I'm a total water baby, so I can stop and rest on the way. And then, the other thing that hit me, because when you were actually talking about the third things and like the slant, the slant, when you were first talking about that, I typed in my notes, because the mountain, sometimes it's too steep, right? Like when you're dealing with those hard issues. And it was like, oh, how would I go up, like on a slant, maybe going up a different way, and it's going to be slippery and challenging and hard.
Yeah. What a beautiful metaphor for the whole concept. Thank you.
Yeah, it's going to be beautiful though. And in a sense, maybe the end, you're headed to the, but maybe the end doesn't matter as much as what I might normally put into it.
Yeah. The journey.
A little journey, yeah. I agree with you, Andy. Same thing. More than the destination.
Neat, Marianne. Thank you.
Well, I know we're getting a little close to the end here. Is there anything else anyone really wants to say before we start to bring it full circle? All right, then at this point, I am going to turn it back over to you, Andy. I'll stop the share for the moment. Oh, actually, yes, I will. And then I'll put it up when you need it.
Perfect. Yeah, I think I'm ready. Why don't we just go ahead into, if you might call it, into that my Lego
Sounds
buddy,
good.
which will make
Let's go to
much
Lego.
more sense as you all see the picture. All right.
We're still seeing the artwork.
Yeah, I'm seeing the artworks here, Michael.
Oh, I clicked on the wrong thing probably. Hang on. All right.
So what I'm going to do, while she's bringing that up,
Here we go. Yep.
Two quick examples.
Did that
Thank you.
work?
Two quick perfect. Yep. Two quick examples of now that we've talked about artworks and the subset of visual artwork, of course, and how powerful that can be. Zooming back just a little bit to my own experience of where third things have been really useful to me. And this is my buddy Brandon Wetstein. I can put his link in the chat if you'd like to know. I got a chance to get together with him in person last year, which was wonderful. He's from New York, but he's just amazing in the work that he does with leadership development. And as you can see, he's got a Lego set, and he brought the Lego set to our coffee meeting here, team meeting. And we were just talking about like, oh, I just gone independent, in my coaching business, leadership development. And it was just smooth as silk that he brought this with, and he just said, well, tell me more about that. And, go ahead and use the Legos if you want to. And like, I didn't even know what was happening until he had me construct the thing in the bottom right-hand corner to describe my business and how I partner with clients and so on. I thought, okay, that's really powerful, what you just did there. And having, so an artwork can be powerful, right? Something in nature can be powerful. And having a third thing that you can play with, oh my goodness, it was wonderful. Like he gave me a Lego set that I took home, right? I got the little guys in front of me here. I have the Lego set that I keep with me. So that third thing that I could interact with, we could interact with, was also a very powerful thing. I'll just give you one more quick example from even more recently into the next slide, if you don't mind, Michael.
Yep.
And this is from, so I'm looking at you, Jennifer Johnson and Betsy, who had to leave because you went through the positive intelligence PQ stuff last year with me, right? And I remember the coaching question that one or all of you came up with as I talked about being grounded was, okay, well, how are you going to stay grounded in the winter, Andy? And here was part of the answer is I constructed this bird feeder station just outside the window of our basement. So it's me, Michael, that's the window right over there. It's literally all in this space, right? And this third thing of this bird feeder station and getting to see a cardinal or a woodpecker or any other variety of birds as I walk by, it's this immediate kind of like, Chris, I love the way you've just described some of the PQ stuff is like, we're getting leaders to meditate, and it's getting me to meditate as I go by this, out of whatever's happening in my day. I just was like, oh, and it gets me quiet. Like, I don't want to interrupt the woodpecker. I don't want to interrupt the cardinal. And it just gets me to pause. It's a third thing for me and whatever else I have going on during the day, right? So third things to be used even in, can I call it self-coaching or with whatever else you have going on, just to be able to pause, appreciate something artful, something else going on. That's something that resonates with me as when I thought about the third things as well.
Thank you. And I will say this. Oh, go ahead.
Again, kind of pre-pandemic when people were coaching, in person, like, did you have something on the table where you're meeting with your clients that they could fiddle with, or
right?
How was that helpful?
Yeah.
My
Absolutely.
work office I did, and my HR role, I had things like a little magnet thing or something else, and people fiddled with them. So I'm just curious how people have used this as a third thing for people.
Yeah, that's a great question, Jennifer. I mean, there's a to keep, let my encouragement, I think, Michael, and my encouragement and all of us maybe is keep your creative juices flowing about what the third thing could be. Keep it really wide open because it could be anything. Yeah. If you're in person, like you say, Jen, you can bring something with or something there. And thankfully, since we're almost, when we're coaching virtually or meeting virtually as leaders, we're almost always on video. So that adds another fun element that you can have the visual too.
Thank you for offering that. Before we turn back to Bev, I'm just going to bring us back to one last third thing experience that Andy and I had that reminds me of all of us in our time together. This is another artwork at the Mayo Clinic that, and again, it's not all about Andy had cancer, but it was times that we had an unexpected something in our midst create a room for us to have dialogue or space or explore a hard topic. And I actually documented this, and I'm just going to read it to you when I updated on CaringBridge. And I said, this is a beautiful artwork outside of the radiation oncology wing at Mayo. And it seems to weave all of our experiences poetically together, especially our experience of the last few months at the time. The installation sculpture is called Light on the Lake. We were both mesmerized by it, but we were even more drawn in after reading the artist's statement. And it began with this quote: "Being part of something larger than ourselves gives our shape, life, and purpose, gives our life shape and purpose. We are all part of something larger, and we feel that truth magnified when we go through hard times." He also goes on to write about his artwork and says, "For me, it is the space between the shapes that is just as important as the shapes themselves." So when you look at it right now, you can almost see the lake itself and the light in the upper right there, and you can imagine it as a whole. When you go up close and look underneath, you get a different view, you change your perspective. And what we realized is here that each piece that makes up the whole is on its own individual string, and they all waver and move a little bit on their own, even though they're part of a larger whole. And the artist even talks about how important not just these shapes are, but the space in between them, the negative space in between, where they come together. And that is what we feel is one of the most powerful things, whether your work is in leadership, whether it's in coaching, whether it's in your personal life, but to really think about how we are all connected as part of a larger whole. We each bring our own magic, and it's the space between us that really connects us. And we think exploring this connection in new ways, whenever we can, like we did today, is just a way to underscore how much this matters in our professional lives. We can do this as a gift to ourselves in our personal lives, and we can do it for other people. So thank you all for creating a space where we could share some of these ideas with you, and for sticking on. I know we told Bev we really needed 90 minutes, and it's just so that people could have a chance to have their own experience. So thank you very much. And thank you, Bev and CCO.
So first, thank you. Really, this was lovely, moving, and immediately useful. What I'd like to do for Andy and Michael is, whether it's in the chat or whether you pop off mute, I'd love for you to share something you're taking away or something that's standing out from your experience today before I give you a few more CCO commercial messages and we bid you a fond farewell for today. So please share in the chat, or if you're willing to come off mute out loud, something about your experience. Jennifer, you're on mute.
Sorry, I took myself off. I am astonished by the use of art and really analogies. In my coaching, I do a lot of it, talking about analogies, but this was very powerful for me then to have some questions to think through the art and how it speaks to me and my challenge. So thank you for that gift.
Thanks, Jennifer.
I'm really struck by how you could almost grab anything and use it as a way to, all it really is a reflection of what you are. You're bringing, you're projecting onto it all the things in your own soul and brain. And so I love the fact that anything will work and that you can talk about it deeply without all of the, I don't know, vulnerability, because it's out there instead of in here.
Thank you for that. I just want to echo, that's one of the values of the third thing, right? It's not this direct confrontational, I'm going to put it all out there. I'm going to come at it around this way, and then my voice and soul and experience is going to come up through that. Thank you.
Thank you. It's great, guys.
I took away that the third thing really is is something to shift your perspective, to take your mind in a different direction, to maybe think differently or open up, or, you know, remove that roadblock that might be there because you've just shifted your perspective. And really, like it's been repeated, it can be anything. Art is a natural third thing, but really Legos can be just as impactful as a really cool or loud piece of art.
Anyone else?
For me, it really brought up like how I just thought so much of the drama triangle and the Cartman drama triangle, and how using a third thing is almost an immediate trip outside of the drama triangle. And I just thought that was just so cool because it turns both of you into the empowerment dynamic, into creators and challenges and challengers at the same time. So it's cool. I liked it.
Beautiful. Thanks, Britta. Marion.
Yeah, and I'm not sure if this is the same thing as what the drama triangle is, but it's this just its power as a tool to help the client or ourselves go inward while still having this thing hanging out there makes helps you think about climbs you wouldn't make or places you wouldn't necessarily want to go or choose to go. And that's just really needed, I think, right now.
Yeah, yeah. Thanks, Marion.
I'll chime in here. I typically gravitate to performance art. And so this is so powerful for me to spend time with two-dimensional art. And I've had something in my space that I've been in relationship to. And today I was able to get a huge takeaway that actually I've been in dialogue with it. And I wasn't aware that it was a conversation. So I really appreciate how much deeper I went today. And the prompts were, so now I feel like it's more living and I'm more cognizant that we're in conversation. So thank you so much. I appreciate this.
Well, that's wonderful. And thank you all for coming off mute and adding something in. I think it's always helpful for folks like Michael and Nancy and Andy to be able to hear what's sticking, at least one thing right now, because as we all know, these things foment and magic happens afterwards too. So thank you, Andy. Thank you, Michael. I am just absolutely tickled and smitten with this session, and I'm so glad it's recorded and that other people will get the benefit of it. I want to just end by focusing you to the chat. I have a link there for the Center for Coaching and Organization Summit if you want to learn more about that. There are early bird rates going on, so that's always something to think about. And I really hope you'll all join us another time for a growth ring. John Armstrong may be one of our upcoming growth rings conveners. So you've had a chance to hang out in this space with him a little bit, and I can tell you it will be a magical experience when he comes and visits us for growth rings. We also have community connects, which are drop-ins. They happen once a month. You can come, you can just hang out, you can bring something, and it becomes like a mini mastermind group for you, whether there are 2 or whether there are 10. They tend to be small, intimate groups, and we just chat about whatever is on folks' minds and soak up that lovely experience of being with like-minded coaches and leaders. So with that, I will say thank you all for coming. And thank you again, Michael, Andy. And we hope we'll see you on down the road. Have a wonderful rest of your week and month. Take care and bye for now.